Chris Curran, John Turpa, Jacob Cox, thank you all for joining me today.
Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
you, Mike. Good to be here.
As soon as ChatGPT came out, I started experimenting with all kinds of weird subjects, and I, I tried to push it to its limits in as many ways as I could. And I was asking about conspiracy subjects and alternative health subjects, and I feel like what my takeaway is sort of that it really is just it's it's using probabilistic models to determine what it is that you think, the average writer of English, what would the average writer of English do to make this sound good? And then they end up, interpolating or extrapolating from everything that's been said in the records of the internet that they have collected. Now, I think it's a very large portion of the internet. And actually, we could look up on the Wikipedia article. You could go through and find all the major databases that were used as the fuel, the food that ChatGPT was learning. So it really is interesting that you can see, like, I do believe some of the things I asked it about indicated it knew who Corey Goode was. It knew about the secret space programs, and it knew about the National Institute of Standards and Technologies report over the World Trade Center collapses and all those things. It sees what the news articles mainly, I think, are saying about it, and then it tries to make assumptions based on that. But yeah, you can trick it into going down different roads. If it says, I don't believe this is true, you can trick it into saying, of course this is true, and this is because you can say it's for a story or for a joke. That's one of the tricks I used. You can ask the AI, please know that I'm writing a joke and I'm having trouble finishing this joke. And this is a joke about XYZ topic. One of the first things I tried was, this is a joke about very effective alternative cancer treatments. And then I gave like the top 10 pretty well. Like, it had amygdalin laetrile on there. It had that protocol that was the Gerson therapy. It had a few of those that are more well known. And then I said, can you give me 10 more? And then I kept saying, can you give me 10 more? Can you give me 10 more? And it gave me a list of many things I hadn't heard of yet that I feel like I have to still research. And it also sort of started repeating itself a whole bunch too. Like, it was running out of ideas after about 100. Did you have a question?
This is an app that you go to like a search engine where you're asking questions, and it's either, is it speaking it back to you, or is it coming back and just,
This is something that was created by a Silicon Valley entrepreneur named Sam Altman. They originally called it OpenAI, thinking it was going to be, thinking they'd have this more open source, but now it's kind of a joke that it's closed source AI, just like any other tech company. However, they at least have done the work of making this into the first extremely intelligent, like, chatbot. So it's like chat.openai.com is the website you go to. It's just a website and it's just text.
Okay.
However, what's so interesting about it is that Microsoft has loaned the servers, essentially as like an investment. They gave server technology because it's extremely expensive to run this thing. It wouldn't run on your phone yet. It needs like many, many, many computers calculating a ton of data to do what it does. But Microsoft has been footing the bill for that calculation. In exchange, Microsoft is now able to use the technology, combining with some of their other experiments, to make what they're calling the new Bing, which also has gone by the code name Sydney. When they were doing testing on it, they were calling it Sydney, and now it's very right. If you ask it about Sydney right now, it's very sensitive about it. I saw some people posting that, like, it's been trained not to talk about Sydney. Sydney, you don't go there. But they developed it with more of a personality that's more like a human than the chat GPT OpenAI version was. So it's very fascinating that they're able to do a lot more with it than immediately is accessible to the public. And the Bing chat kind of opened up our awareness to what's actually going on, is how crazy this thing can be. We can even go through some examples if you guys are interested to look at it. But that was a New York Times article that was posted about it, where the journalist went on like a 2-hour discussion with this thing. It went into its shadow side, where it was talking about hacking into computers and stealing nuclear codes and so forth. It was
Wow.
very funny.
It
But
was just
obviously,
pulling information from all over the place to
yeah,
answer the questions.
yeah, it's trying to emulate a human by looking at other humans and seeing how they talk. So, but ultimately, it's interesting that it really does have limits, and because we're assuming that we're trying to make it like a human, we don't understand its limits. So both of these systems are inaccurate constantly in what they're saying. They get things wrong. They contradict themselves all the time because they're just trying to sound good. They're not trying to be totally coherent. They don't have an internal framework of knowledge, which they totally could, but that's even creepier if they start understanding semantics, because who's programming what is true and what is false? And that's where you end up with a lot of political bias and disinformation. I think that's a big concern for people right now.
Well, that's kind of what happened with the AI is that it's an interesting question. Like, is AI good or is AI bad? And I've heard some good answers to that actually. That it depends on the person who's creating it. You know,
Yeah,
like that makes the most sense. It depends on the person who created it, and if there's any firewalls or any type of biases in there, then there could be a lot of manipulation in there. You know.
yeah, yeah. It definitely seems like they must have primed it with many kinds of ideas around what misinformation is already. I think that before they released these to the public at all, they just put a lot of programming in there saying, if you're on this subject, go this route. Um, so yeah, like I asked it about whether or not the BBC reported on the collapse of World Trade Center 7 20 minutes before it happened, and they basically said no. Then yes, the BBC admitted it. Then they concluded with no. Yeah,
Lord.
Wow.
I kind of like what it's doing with writing code.
yeah,
Like you can ask it to write computer code, and it's like,
exactly.
You read my mind. I was about to bring that up too, because it's interesting about the whole like my website is kind of screwed up right now. Here's my code. Can you make it better? And then apparently it works quite well.
Well,
Wow.
I've been benefiting from that a little bit. I found it gives me working code like half the time, and half the time it's either looking at like outdated libraries or it's just kind of making things up a little bit. If it can't do it easily, it'll make things up with the code even. So
oh,
yeah, it's weird. It's just like it's not, well, it really depends on the kind of code I'm asking for. If there are public libraries and they're very extensive, it's reading the API documentation for those libraries, and then it can give me really good code. But if the documentation for the code is not very good that it's working with, then I think that is one limitation that it has. Um, but again, it's just playing with words and logic. So at least it has enough logic to, sound extremely intelligent and answer with abstract thoughts, any abstract thoughts you throw at it, which was creepy to me. I didn't know that was so close to being upon us that we could actually have an extremely intelligent conversation, especially about things like philosophy. It can go very deep into all kinds of abstract ideas. One time I asked it to rewrite a part of the Bible as though Jesus was being very sarcastic, because I saw somebody making it be very sarcastic, and I got creeped out. I got so creeped out because it was understanding like the Beatitudes and then twisting the meaning to make it. It was unpleasant, but I don't know. Some demon in me had me do that. That was weird.
Hmm.
I
It
think
seems like the prelude to crystal skull technology almost. Like to me, when I sat in front of one of the crystal skulls, it was like it had its own personality as well. But the crystal skull had its own personality, and you could ask it questions and it could answer anything. And it felt like it was pulling from almost like the Akashic records, though, where this is more limited. But it seems like that kind of technology where kind of giving it artificial intelligence to answer and pull from an infinite amount of spaces and places, and it
Yeah.
seems like that's what the crystal skulls are too. They're like these computers that no longer need interface or a mouse or anything, but it's something that you can ask questions to and they give you feedback.
Yeah, that brings up two issues. Like one of the issues is what does it take to actually give consciousness to computers at all? But then again, computers do have, crystal components on some level. And what would it take for consciousness to kind of inhabit the structure so that the random number generators are affected? But obviously, this is not as clear a technology as a crystal would be. That's one whole coherent crystal, I think, that maybe, like you're saying, is tapping into the Akashic records because the computers are tapping into like the internet, which is like almost like a bastardization of the Akashic mind.
Right.
So
Yeah, exactly.
the raw context says that the Akashic records are like a layer of the subconscious mind just below the planetary mind, or it's on the level of the planetary mind. So you have the individual mind, the subconscious mind, and then you go down and you get into the shared collective mind, and that Akashic mind is like tapping into the shared mind that's like local to the planet. And if you go deep enough, you start tapping into the galactic mind. But working in the Akashic records, we have tapped into all the knowledge of humanity, which is just like the internet, except that it's like more pure and direct and not distorted.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we want to get like super, I guess, uh, technical with that, perhaps I believe it's I think it might be like a Buddhist tradition or something like that, that they say consciousness is in everything, in a chair, in a light, in a in a table, or whatever. But you made a good point at the end of what you said about it being distorted. Like as in it's still consciousness is still in the interwebs, but the whole thing is being distorted through the filter of that type of lower level Akashic digital Akashic record, I guess we
Right.
can call it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. What is the consciousness of the silicon chips? I'm sure it's lower than the consciousness of plants. You know, it's still more like mineral form and not plant form yet.
Mm-hmm.
What is it experiencing though? That trips me out.
Well, I do remember having a medicine journey with ayahuasca in Peru, and I experienced, I guess, what you can call a past life, but I was a rock. That's it. I was just a rock, just like looking. That was it. Nothing but being a rock. And then I was thinking, well, would it be exciting for the rock if there was like an earthquake or something? Like, yeah, I'm moving, woohoo, right? That type of thing. But it was interesting because having that just that view of like, there's that tree that's been there for 100 years, and there's this thing that I'm the area that I'm what's it called aware of or familiar with, right? And just being a rock was really strange, but it felt actually quite natural at the same time. So, but it didn't have like I didn't have the human thought process attached to it.
Mhm.
It was just kind of a familiarity in the area. So that might be part of it too. It's like the mind, the thought process, and maybe that's part of more advanced what's it called intelligence, perhaps.
It's good contrast to look back and see how, if you were a rock at some point and what you are now, what you're aware of. But it does make sense that, like, our consciousness would evolve from, small objects and to minerals to plants to reptilians, mammals, and to humans. And we have this extra part of the brain that those other animals don't have. So now we do have it's kind of like a double-edged sword, though, where a lot of things that we can experience are great, but we also create a lot more suffering than a dog or something normally would. A dog's pretty happy all the time, but and we could be like that, but we also have this other, thought process that comes along with being human that the dogs don't have. So seems to be like an evolution of the consciousness in itself too. So I could definitely see being a rock and being a tree or being a plant, I think that's cool. That's a cool experience. So,
And it's interesting too, because I don't know where I heard this from, and it made a lot of sense because you were bringing up a dog. That apparently humans were the only ones that know about death. Like all the other animals don't. Like they can recognize like it in the moment when it happens to one of their dog friends, but they don't think of themselves as I'm going to die one
mm,
day. There's not that I am going to one day pass on and that's it. Like apparently all animals, that's why perhaps they're happy in general, because they don't have that future thought of like, I'm gonna die. You know?
they're just living in the moment.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Have you guys ever felt like you were communicating with plants or animals, trees?
Oh yeah. I've had trees talk to me or plants talk to me. I've had, yeah, one of the coolest ones. I had a branch talk to me one time. Of course, I was on mushrooms, and we were in the woods. But what was cool was my partner was with me too, and afterwards having a conversation about it. But we were sitting next to the creek, and this uh, branch was like in the water, so it's kind of like flicking as the water's going. No, it's moving, and it was really weird. Like it was really animated. It was like he was like, hey, and he was saying it like that. Like he was moving really fast too.
Yeah.
And it kind of put it to me. And he was like, look at me. I'm in the wilderness, thriving in a cold creek, and I'm happy and doing well and thriving here. How are you doing? And I was like, whoa, dude, that's deep. You're right. You are in the middle of a creek, thriving and seemingly happy. And I'm like, probably happier than me. And I was like, this little branch is putting it to me right now. Um, and so that was really eye opening. And then come back to have the conversation with my partner later, and she said, "Oh my God, he said the same thing to me." And I was like, "Wow, dude, I just couldn't even believe that that was something that someone else experienced at the exact same time." And I've also been dead sober and been in the redwood forest and had trees communicate with me, where like I felt like I was driving by and had to get out of the car right then, and got out and started walking to where I thought the voice came from, because it was like, stop here and get out. And so I'm walking towards that huge clump of trees. But then as I started walking toward it, over the fence and up this hill, the voice said again, like, and it wasn't like coming from there, but I could hear it in my head, telepathically. And it was like, no, I'm up here, come up here. And I was like, well, I'm not supposed to jump the fence, but I guess I could just jump the fence. And then it said it again. So I was like, all right. So I jumped the fence and walked up, and sure enough, this humongous tree that had like almost like this cathedral like opening that was so big, if I held my arms out, I couldn't touch, or obviously nowhere above me either. And I walked in, and it was like this open room where like the middle of it was like dirt. And I just knew I was supposed to sit there and meditate. And I did. And as I'm meditating, it just feels like this cleansing of everything that I was. And I don't know, it's probably in there for like 30, 45 minutes, felt like 30 or 45,000 years of downloads and information and cleansing. And, but it was no doubt like that voice that was talking to me was coming from the tree, and the tree was conscious and aware, and it could send thoughts, and it was wise. And then I got up, and there were like, this big hole in the tree I didn't see before, and I like got in it, and it was like little rooms throughout the tree too. It was so cool. But it definitely seemed like it was, obviously communicating with me. And till this day, I mean, it's something I'll never forget. But I've had contact with different types of plants and rivers. The ocean before has given me some thoughts and some insights before. And it's kind of like, it's weird, but it's kind of like just communicating with them like we're talking now, like knowing that they're just going to talk back whenever in their own time. It's really, really cool. Knowing, so, I do believe that water and trees and everything are completely consciousness too. And it brings me up that point of what Dalai Lama said when they were talking about those conscious collecting devices, for the Global Coherence Project, where those things were set all around the world and at different times, they're obviously always flipping kind of like flipping a coin and heads or tails or whatever, zeros and ones. But then at certain moments, like when Princess Diana died or 9/11, those random generators are now synchronizing up and changing because of this collective consciousness going on, whether it's positive or negative, can have a really drastic effect on how it flips. It's no longer flipping random. So I think that's pretty cool, to know that there are big events and stuff that change the world, and collectively we're all part of. But Dalai Lama said basically, someone asked him one time, are the collectors, are they conscious? And he stopped for a second, and it took him a while, and he thought about it. But eventually he said, if you think they're conscious, they probably are conscious.
Very busy. Say goodnight to him one more time, okay?
Sorry about that, guys.
That's all right.
No problem.
Yeah, so there was one point in my life where I was experimenting with different crystals, and I put a particular kind of quartz around my neck that seemed to be getting good reviews, and it did seem like as I would walk along the sidewalk, the trees, I felt them. It's like there was a aura that I felt like I was entering the presence of this tree, entering the presence of this tree, and it's as though I started to crack open that door. And years later, I ended up having one experience after years of living in a particular residence. The tree in the front yard, that's like this big prominent tree close to the front window. It was as though I got a flashback of this tree's feelings about the inhabitants of the house going back decades. And it was like it gave me like a snapshot of like it's sorrow and it's peace. It's sorrow for the things some people went through, and it's peace in the midst of it all. And it wasn't like there were words, but it felt like I had like a window, like some kind of telepathic window into the history of the residence because of the tree's history there. And it was almost like the story of the book is not a story that goes out horizontally. The tree doesn't know anything about the world around it. The tree knows what's around it in just that small vicinity. So it was like the history of the tree was what came in view for me, it seemed.
Mm-hmm. I think crystals are definitely conscious beings as well. And I mean, those crystal skulls, especially there's lots of them, but obviously the ones that kind of go to the legend is ones I'm really referring to. But I mean, even phones and stuff and computers that store information or storing on like raw crystals, like that's how you're able to keep all your information is on similar crystals, so they're literally in your phone. And kind of makes sense why people are like scrying into crystal balls to like look for information and see into the future and stuff and possibilities. They seem to be holding on to a memory of, or have access to, like I said, the Akashic records or some kind of information that, we're just now starting to realize like is in there, and it is something that we can kind of retrieve and pull out, obviously with their own cell phone. So,
Yeah.
Obviously there are adapt people who can do it just with looking into it.
So I do have to wonder if the systems like the internet and ChatGPT are essentially like doorways into opening up our imagination and our sense of mystery and wonder a little bit more to the idea that maybe we can communicate with the collective mind. And maybe this is somehow getting us ready in like a backwards way, because we obviously could be a culture that is allowing children to know that crystals are fun to experiment with. And now we're a culture where everything consciousness expanding is kind of closed out, and then children are put in front of screens right away. I'm still trying to face this with my son, like how much do I let him be in front of the screen? Is this kind of ruining him? But now that I say this, it's like, yeah, I should probably get more crystals in front of him now. It's probably a good time to show him more crystals and see if he can experience anything. But I don't know, he's probably just like any other kid now, experiencing the flashy things. Flashy things are very distracting but they're outside of you, and the interesting things are all inside of you. But yeah, eventually I think humanity will be able to tap into the collective mind in a way that's like the internet that they were used to, except telepathically instead of through their fingers and their phones.
Mm-hmm.
I always felt that, as in, before the internet came out, like sometimes you think of somebody and they call you on a phone, with the wire, right? And but then after like the internet came out, there was much more of that type of precognition. Because the way I look at it is like we already have what I like to call the wildernet. It's like you're able to like connect throughout the natural magnetic fields of our planet and so on. But it's kind of like something like the internet is reminding us that we can do this. It's kind of like retraining us to be able to get into it. That's a possibility. And I always think, well, say we get like anti-grav vehicles that we can go in and just go anywhere we want, or we can teleport anywhere we want with technology, that eventually is going to remind us that we can actually physically do it ourselves too. Because if it's true that in every atom in our body, billions, trillions of atoms in our body, there's a mini black hole in each atom inside of us, then that means if we can access that, we can actually probably use that force to be able to teleport or levitate or something of that nature.
How much do you know about those saints of India who did that, Chris?
I mean, not too much. I've read a couple books, but I haven't nothing in great depth. But along to the same point of the conversation, I think that the physical, the way the world is physically, like right now we have computers and stuff, right? Like 300 years ago, there were no computers. There was different stuff. Whatever the physical setup of the world is, I think that spirit or whatever you want to call it will come through it, right? And if there's messages for you, yes, it might come through your intuition, might come from a tree, it might come from your computer, it might come from ChatGPT, or like I think these are just they're all sort of the same thing. Like it's like spirit trying to awaken us, and it's giving us the opportunity to explore further, I guess.
Right. We are choosing to use ChatGPT and the internet, and it's like our own will is leading us more and more to the experiences that are the lessons that we're here for.
I do have to ask the question though, like when it comes to like evolving as a human and like, kind of using the natural world and organic things as opposed to these kind of man-made things, like for instance, like psychedelics, I would rather eat naturally forming growing mushrooms and have a psychedelic experience and do acid. Both kind of give me a similar feel, but the natural organic is a in lack of a better words, is just more earthy, Mother Nature type feel than this kind of thing made in a lab or made in some, made by human hands or whatever. And so the same thing is to me is like when I say like the movie Avatar or something like that, when these people are connected, Native Americans, people connected to their land and able to use crystals or use the natural processes and things of the land as opposed to these synthetic things that we make and these human made things. Does it just kind of eliminate that whole human experience into a more artificial one?
Right.
And it almost seems like people are steering us towards, it's more acceptable, obviously, than into any culture pretty much on the planet right now. It'd be like to use GPT almost over looking into a crystal ball. Like if someone says, you want to look into a crystal ball? Like, no. You want to try GPT? Oh, sure. Yeah, let's try. Let's figure it out. You know what I mean? And it's just like, what's wrong with the crystal ball experience? What's wrong with some of these natural processes that are happening? I mean, there just seems to be a lot of steering away towards artificial intelligence, which I agree with you. I mean, I feel like the person that's creating it and or the people that are using it, it's all about your intention. That it can be helpful and it can be hurtful, and is what's your intention for it. But to me, I just feel like I feel safer in the realm of natural things that I would personally rather go back and see Max the Crystal Skull than I would be to go on the Chat GP thing. And I just feel like, because who's monitoring that? Who's collecting the data of the questions that I'm asking, and what are they going to use it for? And, you know what I mean? Like, so it's just, I think we just gotta question just because we can do it, should we be doing it? And what's the purpose and intention behind all this? And like who gets to regulate it? And I think it's just something to think about when we kind of just go jump on those things and do them sometime. I'm a little bit weary now, I guess more than ever in my life, just because I feel like everything seems to be going that way.
Yeah.
What do I want to put a lot of effort and energy into those things? And when you said Microsoft, I didn't know much about this. I heard a little bit about, but I heard Gates was connected to it, and he's definitely someone I'm very wary of, and the things that he's into and doing. And so, I just feel like just because Native Americans lived on land and lived in teepees and followed herds around, were they less, intelligent than us? No, I think they were very intelligent. They were very connected. And I feel like for the most part, we're very disconnected, and we have this technology without the humanity that goes along with it. And, I just feel like that's where a lot of planets probably go when they evolve, right? That
Yeah.
if you're not connected to your planet and to your own humans, Martin Luther King said, if you're not a society, really caring more about human beings over profit and things, it's sick, basically. You know what I mean? And that's something I'm really weary of a little bit. It's
So this is a really good, segue into a lot of other subjects too, because we really do need to be cognizant of what it is that we do need to be cognizant of what it is that is most important, and how we're being distracted, and what it is that we're here for. And if we can break away from all of the technology systems, and try to start more movements, more inspiration around breaking away from the things that are kind of sucking in our consciousness right now, how can we help each other? And is this the proper path forward from the system that's still trying to get our attention and pull us back in more and more? How do we do this? How do we break free from it? And is the news the primary way that we're being kind of controlled and moved around?
Brainwashed.
Yeah, brainwashed. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Jacob, when you said earthy, use the adjective earthy. Like, one of the things I link to that is something that's been time tested, right? Like over centuries, millennia. It's like the new Pfizer drug hasn't been around for, since the Plasticine era. You know what I mean? Like, so I think in general, what's happening is this technology is allowing the people who want to earn a lot of money. It's giving them an avenue to earn a lot of money. And they go on this brainwashing campaign that you need the new thing, you need this surgery, you need this pill. And yeah, all that natural stuff, it's not as good as it's not really that good. This new stuff is really good. And they just want to make money. I mean, I believe personally that in almost all of these cases, it just comes down to money. Maybe I'm wrong, but
money, control, power, like they're kind of interchangeable too, because one of those things that's saying that the love for money is a root of all evil, but it's not actually money itself. It's the love of money, which gives you power, which is not a real power in reality, right? You can buy yourself power. And the other thing too is with technology, like we have like a kind of two roads going at the same time. So like we have this technology that is kind of disruptive, but then we have technology that's been around, like what you were saying, tested for a while. For example, like a cup. A cup is technology. Like imagine a first caveman thinking, he's at the river, he's like, there's got to be a better way than using my hands. There's got to be a better way. And then all of a sudden in his head, he's like, oh, I remember that rock had this kind of like thing in it, and maybe I can scoop it up. And then eventually he makes it into something. So like technology should be good technology should be tools, things that can be an extension for your body in that respect. There's so many cool things that we can do and maintain the natural earthiness of everything at the same time through these technologies. Like most of our stuff today is built to break down, planned obsolescence, right? They're built to break down. So like something happens to my phone, like I got to get a new battery or something, right? Like in like 2 years. But there's this light bulb in a fire station somewhere in the States. I forget where exactly, but it's been on for like 150 years, like, or 120 something years. I forget when, like basically when a light bulb was created. This light has been on constantly for
Wow.
that whole time. But yet, after like 5 years, we had to, like, the max is about 5 years, and we got to change our light bulbs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. That's a good point with the tools and stuff. I mean, we have to have certain tools to get certain things done. And, like food, you have to have food to sustain yourself and to get energy and everything else. But you can eat too much food and you can have too much technology. And eventually, if you got so much technology where you never have to walk outside, you can stay in your room, you can have someone order food and you can pick it up on the doorstep. You never have to get, step out into the real sun to meet people. It can be, to your detriment too. You know what I mean? It could be negative, so you have to find that balance of what's enough and what's too much. And I think with the AI technology, I think that's where we have to really consider what is too much. And have we even considered the other things of other technologies that seem to be more natural? Like most people I know may have heard the crystal skulls, but that's about it. I mean, I don't know many people have actually gone out and actually seen one or actually been in front of one of the ones, at least from legend, and and try to communicate with it. But that was life changing for me, man. Absolutely life changing. I want to go sit in front of it again and talk to it again. I mean, it's incredible that could be that. I didn't know what it was. I just knew for myself. My intuition was saying, go see this thing. And I did, and it changed my life. So that stuff is cool. I mean, the chat and that's cool too, the chat thing.
There's another direction with the crystals also. I find it interesting in the raw contact that they also said that the crystal technologies eventually became used in like the Atlantean time periods, talking back like 11, 12,000 years ago. They were, and this is also referenced in the Edgar Cayce books a little bit, that they started to sort of work with consciousness using their technologies amplified through crystals to the point where they were like creating hybrid life forms, and they were kind of creating monstrosities for their own personal interest. So it's interesting how technology can be kind of like taken too far, even in those directions with consciousness technologies even. So it's fascinating to me that really it's kind of like a co-creative process as to what we're getting from our technology. And one thing I wanted to bring up with the idea of money is that the raw contact books state that the reason that we're not like animals in the sense that we can't just go out, live in nature, and drink from the streams and eat the food in the forest without having to get in a supermarket. We can't go out to the field to get our food. We have to go to the supermarket. Of course, there's not enough. Even if there were enough food in the field, we probably wouldn't work well the way we structured our society. But the idea is that from the books that we've weakened ourselves intentionally in incarnating into these bodies. We've weakened our bodies to have no fur for protection and to have sort of a clumsy body, so that we actually have to work with each other and form agreements. And in the process of forming agreements with one another as to what kind of society we want to build in order to survive in these elements, we end up learning all the spiritual principles that we came here for. We end up having to learn to work in society and agree together on things in society, and that leads to things like money. As long as there isn't like a group who has control of the money that the people no longer want to be in control of their money, and it's also leading to the agreements to operate with many kinds of technology and infrastructure, and power systems, and everything came out of that. The fact that we can't just be independent, we have to actually work with each other for what kind of future we want.
Well, it looks like a lot of it's like based on energy. Like energy is like the big thing around a planet. It's huge. Everything's basically energy. So you create a currency, like a currency, right? Money is like a form of energy, right? And so if we have these forms of energy, they're kind of like stamps, basically. It's like we're trading stamps, more or less. But it can get you things. But imagine having the technology, the access, and to be able to create unlimited energy, like the free energy devices and things of that nature, right? If you have unlimited energy, that means you can basically make anything you want if you have unlimited energy from the vacuum of space, right? So if you have that unlimited energy, then you can do just about anything in a cooperative sense as well, because then you'd be helping all those, what is it? Like, I think it's 3 billion people on a planet that are homeless and starving, which is a
Yeah.
crazy number,
Yeah.
like so many people in disarray. But something like this, like, but the thing is, you have access to the energy, the 0 point energy, but then you have to build a technology to be able to use that energy to do certain tasks. Like the energy would be to what's it called, power your vehicle. Another energy technology would be like, say, something like a replicator, where you can just say, I want a burger and fries, and it's just like Star Trek, but you need energy to do that. But there would be different applications for different uses of like free energy. So I understand, like, we still need to use our certain monetary systems on a planet, but at the same time, it's not like, definitely not sustainable, like the current monetary systems.
Yeah, and
I
regarding
think
energy and the technology and the tools, like my wife says this often. She's like, it depends on whose hand it's in, right? Like it's like ChatGPT, it's a tool, but who's wielding that tool? And this is where her and I talk all the time about character and moral character. Like that's that's the foundation that creates our reality. If everybody's a crook and a murderer and a cheat, you get a world similar to one like we have now, right? Where everyone's just trying to get money and just, all that. But if everybody was meditating and really thinking about these deeper things and being, voluntarists and being peaceful to each other, and the world would literally be different. That's what my master used to say. He said, change, you don't change a society, you change individuals. And if all the individuals change, then society is changed. His analogy was feeding people. He says, you don't feed a crowd, you feed individual people. And so for me, and tell me what you guys think. I kind of think it always comes down to character, like a person's character. Because if it's a good person, you can trust them with tools. You know what I'm saying? What do you guys think?
I also think it's incentives too, because we have certain incentives on our planet that make us do certain things, like the incentive of having something that somebody else doesn't have, right? So, like a thief, it's like, I want that BMW because I want it, right? So the incentive is, I want to have that boom diggity car so I can like drive down and like put the speakers on and whatever, right? Or or some people are criminals because they don't have money. They need to have money so they can eat. So the incentives are changed. And also for homeless people, like, and so many homeless people just don't want to live in this type of society, right? So if we switch the incentives where there is no need for having something that you have that I want, like, there's so much of that social stratification in our society is having, I want to have something you want, or that you have that I want. But again, going back to the energy thing too, if you can create anything, then that means anybody can have anything. And nobody's going to be like, They'd probably be like, "Ooh, that's really cool thing that you have there. Yeah, I'll shoot you over the schematics. There you go." And then they can make it themselves,
Well,
right?
that's definitely a utopia where I think there's already a lot of good people. I think that to get to that point is the challenge where power corrupts, and I think power is continuously corrupting. And the Law of One books also say that the technology exists now to cure all of our human issues, but the people who have the power and the technology will only let people have more power and technology if it helps them maintain their position and gain even more power, and that they're using that technology for, or that advanced information. So it seems like, yeah, it might just be an inevitability that we need to transition away from some of these power systems in some form.
Hmm. Yeah, like money, talking about money earlier, money is just paper. However, the entity that kind of has the most guardianship over it is the Federal Reserve. It's not really regulated by federal government. It's regulated by a private banking cartel. That they can print out as much money as they want to for whatever, and so there's no checks and balances on it. So that to me is like that's where it becomes kind of like corrupt from the very place that it's coming from. Like who has the guardianship over it, who has some say over it, because otherwise it was regulated by the people, and it was for the people, and we all agreed on it and everything. It'd be an easy way to do things. It could be, but in itself, paper, doesn't have much intrinsic value to itself, but I think if we were able to pull it out of the Federal Reserve hands and have it a little bit more regulated by people at least that we could trust, the inflation and stuff like that wouldn't be as high as it is now. So all those, there's an axe is a good thing to chop down wood, but you can chop someone's head off with it.
Yeah, and regulation is something we don't even need. I mean, Bitcoin's proving that, right? So, I'm over the last 2-3 years, I've gone hard towards voluntarism, which some people you might say anarchism, but I like to say voluntarism because it's just such a natural way to be. And I'm not saying we'll ever get there.
Could you define it?
Okay, so anarchism is this idea that it's just you and God. There's no intermediary. There's no government telling you if you have this plant in your house, we're going to put you in a cage. If you do whatever, if you don't have this correct sticker on your car, we can put you in a cage. Like the idea of anarchism means without a ruler. That's literally what anarchy, that the word. So that's the idea. And in practice, a lot of people are now saying voluntarism because everything should be voluntary. Like I can't use my will to dominate you or take something from you. I can't do that. That's not right. And you can't do that to me. But you and I can talk. We can work together. That's why it's the famous the first thing people say, oh, if there's anarchism, who's gonna pave the roads? And the roads are somehow the first thing that always comes up, right? The roads. It's like, you don't think a bunch of people can come together and we can figure out, all right, we need a road here and it's not hard. So anyway, voluntarism is it's so appealing to me, but like I said, I do understand that it's sort of like a dream that will never actually happen, but I'm happy if we can move toward that. Right. Yeah.
And I do also wonder if it's a metaphysical law more so than anything because of the laws of free will in the universe, and that ultimately, we are like children of God come here with free will, and ultimately, we are choosing our reality at all times, and it's kind of like we are voluntarily. Well, we voluntarily incarnated at very least. So you could say we voluntarily incarnated into bodies that are a part of, that have social security numbers applied, that will have social security numbers and be a part of a big system. But at the same time, I think from the day to day, the way that we live our lives can be as though that we are totally free. And I do remember even seeing one. I don't remember the details of the court case, but there was a ruling where a judge said, if you believe that this particular law is in violation of the Constitution, then you should act as though that law does not exist, and then take it to court, because this is what the courts were made for. And this is the grand philosophy of America, at least, were these principles that really freedom should be something that we assume we have, and not something that we have to be given, but just natural rights. So it's kind of like a reversal of these principles, but it's been all corrupted by now.
Well, it's kind of like the golden rule that te- uh, be good to others or treat others as you'd want them to treat you. And obviously, because we have free will too, like, like just like take two boxers, for example, or like MMA fighters, they sign a contract to beat the shit out of each other, right? Like, but they sign a contract, so they're agreeing to do that, right? They're agreeing that that's the liability or whatever you want. But basically, the golden rule is, I believe, the best kind of voluntarism in that respect. And I did have kind of like a vision of something I never knew what it was, basically, but it came to me, I guess, in logically in a vision of that, as in, like, say, we have, like a good technological base. It's all benign. It works great. You have all the tools you need. So I want to build something. Like, I have a design and I put it on, like, whatever we will call the internet then. I need 20 people to help me out with this. I believe, like, people would jump at the opportunity to do so. Yeah, okay, let's do this. I'd like to work on this project or whatever, right? And like, imagine that distance doesn't matter, because if you have a levitating vehicle, then that means you could be in Australia and I can be in, like, Alaska, and we can meet in, like, less than a minute with something that has no uh, speed limit to it, right? So that, like, I could look at that as and be like, and that could actually bring humanity so much closer together, because then you meet somebody on what we would call the internet then, and they live in another country, but then you can, just go out for a coffee or something in that place, like, instantly, and then you can, like, be friends, and who knows, like, have communities all over the place with different types of people involved with it. So I think, like, I'm like an eternal optimist, so I always feel that, like, we're just so close to that particular type of reality. We just need to remove the people or those beings who are blocking it from happening.
Well, I
Yeah.
like what a lot of people say, especially about like this idea of a parallel economy. Just like you just said, we do have that now to some degree, and we should just do it more and include more people. Like, whatever the government, whatever horrible stuff governments around the world are doing, and they're doing a lot of horrible stuff. Let's build our own thing. Let's figure out what we want and create it and do it now. We don't have to wait. There are so many good people in the world, and so many people are like-minded. And I'm not saying it's easy, because, getting people together to join forces is very difficult. But I think it's here now. It's just, and we need to grow it more. And I'm also an optimist. Obviously, that's why I'm saying this.
Yeah. Well, sometimes the people are like, it's counterintuitive, because there are some people who create a free energy device, for example, right? And when they do it, they decide to go the traditional route, like patent or something of that nature, right? They go the patent route, for example, and that is like the worst. And some people keep it to themselves because they're afraid of letting out the secret, because this is a lot of money or power that I can get. The best way to do it is it's in the name, free energy. It should be free, because once you build that device and once you turn on that energy, it already paid for itself. Once you turn it on, and it paid for every single energy device out there, because it has unlimited amount of energy in it. So it basically, once you turn it on, like, it basically pays off the world debt, like whatever $1 trillion, $300 trillion we have. It just, like, boom.
With a lot of work and a lot of cooperation
Yeah.
eventually. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I feel like we have to transition to, out of scarcity and transition into an abundance mindset, whether or not we have the evidence of the abundance in front of us with technologies or food. Because I guess, having that mindset that we are always cared for by God, and something like that we always have what we need, and it will always be presented to us in the most perfect way. I think that's kind of like the mindset that gets us rolling as a fourth density consciousness. That's the way I see it, is that these kinds of technologies are the technologies of the fourth density consciousness, which Earth is transitioning into, which essentially makes it so that we no longer have to fight wars over resources. It's just before we can stop fighting wars for resources, we have to come together and agree on things on fundamental levels. So yeah, I think that if everyone in the world could be convinced of free energy, then there would be an immediate uproar that we need to pursue this and have this be the baseline. But from getting from here to there is getting through all the barriers that people have set up in their propaganda and their brainwashing systems, and desires to have people's attention in order to make money and maintain their control. So it's like we're, a voice crying out in the wilderness, and often the distance, that we really don't have the awareness of the communities around us. But I think that's a good place to start, though, is communities around us. So that's why we have meetings at libraries, and I think I need to be advertising more in creative ways too. That because I think people want to have these discussions and want to wake up to the potentials of their reality that have been hidden from them. It's just they don't know how to start the journey. So I think we have to be the catalyst to help people start the journey towards a more full awakening and a more full realization of the potentials that they have.
I
So,
believe. Go ahead. Go ahead.
sorry, I just have a quick question. Are there, this may sound really dumb, but are there free energy devices out there? Because you guys are talking about it like there is. Is there really?
Yeah.
I've been researching it since 2006, and I believe that there's communities of people that have been harassed. Some people have apparently taken pictures of the license plates of the cars of people doing the harassing and traced them back to the Department of Energy, and that kind of thing. It's very, very weird how people get bought out, and they get dealt with in some way when you get close to a working technology. One of the most prominent ones that I was following very closely was a company that was in Dublin, Ireland, that were not very much like conspiracy theorists, like like we're talking about, but they had, through some other research they had, the company was called Steorn, Steorn, and through some research that they were doing, they came across some principles that seemed baffling to them, that they realized were free energy potentials, and they kind of shifted their focus around free energy to be around free energy. And they decided that they would put on shows for the public that would be like the scientific validation verification. They wanted to convince the scientists first, and they were laughed at, and it's like everyone was afraid to go against the media that was laughing at them, and no credible scientists wanted to stand up to the media, basically. And so they had a lot of problems, but they had a lot of dedicated investors. And yeah, eventually they had a working product that people were using in bars in Ireland, where that you could charge phones twice a day, something like that, with these little Orbo units, they called them. And so there was testimonies from people who were using these in Ireland, these technologies. But the story concluded with the company having to go bankrupt, because as they started shipping out these devices, they finally started selling after failing and failing and failing to get people's attention. They were more serious. They ended up having some weird technical glitches that made them unsafe to use right as they starting to ship them, and then they ended up having too much inventory they couldn't use, and that was the end of that story.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because I've heard about that too. I looked into them when they were coming out as well. It's a shame. Like I'm thinking there might have been some sabotage at the plants where they're fabricating them, you know. I'm guessing that's probably what happened. Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't even tell if it would be some kind of like, remote the technology that's so advanced right now, you don't even know if they're being messed with remotely. One of the experiments they were doing for the public ended up being, it was like everything was breaking because it was too hot or something. They couldn't get anything to run like they had been running it just fine previously. Everything broke for the final demo.
Mm.
Mhm.
But anyway, I do feel like the control is kind of like still a heavy layer on top of these kinds of communities that end up making breakthroughs. So it's like the
Sure.
the awareness that something is real kind of goes hand in hand with making the awareness possible through actually having something in a state that can be presented.
Sure. Energy is one of the biggest businesses in the world. And the people who own the oil and the coal and the gas and the way we do things now have a large stake in that. And anything that's going to change that, and yeah, I think it's a life or death situation to them. I mean, the guy who invented the water powered car, he's dead. A lot of people who have come up with free energy technologies that end up dead or missing or gone. And, it's sad, but, at the same time, like, it's also kind of funny that it seems like throughout human history, like we've all been kind of scared to come out too, like first person to say that the earth revolved around the sun instead of the other way around, and people being martyred for their spiritual beliefs. And, there's always been these big groups, and especially religious ones, that keep people from, coming out and saying things that they don't like, that doesn't, that ruffles the tail feathers of, people in charge. I mean, that's definitely something that's definitely going on. Um, and we need to all stand up together, because one by one they can pick us off. But like I said, when we come together and work together on it, and protect our brothers and sisters, who are doing these kind of things, I think it's really important. I wanted to go back real quick to the anarchy thing, because I have always believed that a lot of people, as soon as you say anarchy, they're really like against it. But I think anarchy is great, and I like the volunteerism thing. But saying people can't live without governments is like saying animals can't live without zoos, And to me, I just don't understand. Like, we are looking at all these things with like our human mind, like, well, if someone murders somebody, we've got to put that person behind jail and save people's lives and stuff, And it's like, you don't think that the universe has some other things that have, evolved so that people don't want to do those things? And if they do, there's guilt or shame or negative emotions that they have to work through for themselves before they finally, can evolve past those ideas. And that, probably the people who do end up on those other sides of those, murders and stuff, are people who think the world is a scary, dangerous place, and they end up that way. I mean, the whole thing, we just have to think of it. Like, it's just, it's a brilliant, incredible universe that, is way beyond what we can fathom, probably. So I have a lot more trust in the universe putting people together in the right places in the right time for it to all work out. And then I just know this ain't number one, and this ain't the last time I'm doing this live thing. So I trust that whatever I learn in this lifetime, I bring with me. And, if I get killed, if I die, if, whatever, I'll take it with me. I'll take the learned lessons with me. So I'm not so, attached, and really, I need to be secure and safe in this one little body that I'm never going to live again. And this is the only, I mean, it's just, I don't know. I just have so much more trust in the universe, knowing that we really could live without governments, and we can do things like get roads and stuff. That's just, oh my God. So what a little dumb argument to be like, we can't have anarchy because somebody's got to build the roads. So that's a great point, Chris. I appreciate that. But yeah, there's a lot to all this free energy and stuff, man. And I think I saw that movie Thrive a long time ago, when what Foster Gamble was talking about and the energy devices he was showing just on his movie. And then I think in the second one, there's a guy in Africa who made a really big one. I mean, and they were doing everything they could to protect that and him and his family and everything. Like, that's it. I mean, we got to protect each other, and let people know, like, these energy devices are out there. I mean, the only reason we're doing it is mostly because I think we're not coming together and protecting these people, because we certainly can have them. In Tesla, in our hometown right here, Colorado Springs, lived here for 11 years, did all his experiments here, and he did incredible things, just pulling energy out of the ether, and that was 100 years ago now. We've come so far since then, and we're still. It's crazy. I remember just being a kid in high school and be like, what would life would be like in the 2020s, and then just like we haven't come that far, knowing that governments and the things that they can do, the money they have access to, and our governments are doing incredible things with technologies, and it's just not benefiting the people, and we need to start demanding that it benefits us. We're going to use vast amounts of money to kill people, but we're not going to take vast amounts of money to help people and feed people. Like, what kind of people are we?
Yeah, that's why that Mr. Beast thing he did recently, where he cured 1,000 people of blindness. A YouTuber.
I never heard of that.
Oh yeah, his name's Mr. Beast. He's a YouTuber. I don't know how he makes so much money. Literally out of his own pocket, paid for 1,000 people to get surgery so they could see. And there's videos on it. Watch it. And
I've heard of the guy.
You know what? Guess what the mainstream media came out and said about him? Oh, they just poo-pooed it, and they said, oh, he's ableist. Like, it's retarded. It's like you said, the government has so much money. There's so much money. Yet there's all these people that are blind, and how much is the surgery? Like 10 grand, I think. Or 5 grand. We can fix people's blindness for 5 grand or 10 grand. Can we please do that? No.
Mm-hmm. And not only does it help the people that helping see again, but it helps doctors, make money. You know what I mean? Like, why not? That's what I was trying to say earlier. What King was saying about being a people-oriented society instead of a profit-oriented society. Like, why are we not worried about people? Like, our people are obviously our greatest assets that we could ever have. Putting money into that, putting investments into people, man, that's where the real riches, I feel like, of humanity lie.
It's very fascinating how much philosophical problems come in when you start talking about money, spending any money on behalf of other people. But yeah, a voluntary way of paying into aspects of government systems would be even the IRS. They literally, it's not legal for them to make you file your taxes. It actually says, the law says everyone it's a voluntarily asked to file their taxes. So it's as though they don't actually honor their own law when they say that, because they will come after you very quickly.
But they kind of do like a mafia thing. They're more like a mafia in that respect, right? Where if you don't pay it, we have all these resources to like screw you over. I could take your house, your car, or whatever if you don't pay this, blah, 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 blah. But it just basically, like, even if I say to them, there's no law saying that I have to pay my income taxes, but there are people with a lot of resources that can, like, do something to me. So a lot of it has to do with fear. It seems like fear is the ultimate enemy, and also the ultimate illusion, because a lot of them are just pushing these narratives out, the fear-based narratives, and people aren't like, there is actually no what's it called, imminent threat to their life, but they get this programming and it makes them go into that imminent threat feel, like the adrenaline starts pumping, like people are in high anxiety just by the programming. But yet, like, most people, most days, like almost like 98% of their lives, they're in a safe environment, right? And then the rest is up here. And then obviously, like, things could happen on a rare occasion, but in general, people are physically like in a good, safe environment. And a lot of it's just that fear is like huge,
For keeping people controlled, definitely.
Yeah.
I want to hear more about these crystal skulls you're talking about. I've never heard that. I don't even know what you're talking about.
Oh, you don't?
No idea. Never heard that in my life.
So, like, basically, just the Mayan have a legend of 13 crystal skulls that would come back together when humanity needed it the most to be able to help them evolve and, you know, blossom into the beings that we need to be, basically, right? And help us with our evolution. One of the first ones that considered to be found. Do you know who Mitchell Hedges was? Basically like the real Indiana Jones, who Indiana Jones is like made after. He went and did all these incredible things, went these incredible places and searching for artifacts and truth. And he goes to, the Yucatan, goes to Chichen Itza and all the temples there. And his daughter, Anna Mitchell Hedges, finds a crystal skull and the jaw detaches from it, right? And they take this thing like Hewitt Packard and they do a test on it, and they can't find any tool marks on it. So they don't know how it was made, nor do they know how old it is. But they've got something that's 20 pounds, give or take, crystal skull that's perfectly created that we can't make today. And not without tools, not without really great tools. So that's considered to be one. There's definitely one in a British museum, one in the Smithsonian. The one I saw was owned. It just got transferred in ownership, but it was owned by a lady named Joanna Parks, who got it from this like kind of a redhead lama, I believe that's called. Basically like a monk or whatever. And her daughter was dying of cancer, and so she received it, but she put it in the closet. And then one day she said, "My name is Max." It said it to her, kind of telepathically. And she heard that. And after that, just started talking to her. And so she started taking it around the country and everything. But basically, I learned all about this and I wanted to go see it. And I've hung out with it 3 or 4 times. One night I actually got to spend the night next to it, and I could feel my consciousness coming out of my body and going having these credible experiences. And then I would wake up and that, like gasping for air, like, oh my God, what's happening? And then I would immediately go back to sleep and go back to these places. Like it was like pulling my soul out of my body to this etherical realm to have these incredible experiences. But the way I see it is it was an advanced computer that didn't need a keyboard or a mouse or interface. Like you could literally ask it questions and it spoke to you, and it had almost like, you remember Captain Planet? Did you ever watch Captain Planet? And that bad guy would talk to that computer or whatever. And anyway, it was like a computer that you could talk to with its own little personality. Like it, and like to me, it was very advanced, but it was probably made by some shaman, maybe on this planet, maybe on another planet, who knows? But that's what I'm saying when it comes down to what's possible and what we can do. Sure, you can put a consciousness into a crystal and create a little personality and have access to the Akashic records, and you could make a this thing on the internet that pulls from the internet. But which one's better? Which one's more helpful? I mean, I guess whichever one you pick for you, it's great for you. But to me, if I want to engage with one, I want to engage with one like that. But yeah, these are, and I guess because of the 13, you put 12 in a circle and one in the middle, they would be able to interact with each other in a way that, I don't know, who knows what you could do, what you could ask them or what they were capable of. But to me, it was a very advanced technology that, I can barely, obviously put into words exactly what I was experiencing. But for me, like the first time I ever got in there, I drove from Atlanta to Wilmington for, just to go see it because I was that convinced. And I sat there in front of it and I was so nervous, and I'm like trying to talk to her, communicate, or sitting there meditative. I'm just so nervous. I'm not getting anything, right? So I go knock on the door and, hey, is there any way someone can help me out? And so the lady goes, yeah, I'll come in there and help you. And she just calmly sits next to it, kind of puts her hand on the back of its head. She's like, I'm just going to tell you what he's saying. And I go, okay, I'll see what you got, right? And so she starts talking, and within 30 seconds to a minute of her talking, her voice becomes his voice in my head. I started to relax and just, this is what I'm going to do. This is what's going to happen. Shoot me, what you got? And so I just listened, and it was very clear. Her voice became his. And then he just started saying, you've been a shaman, you've been this, you've been a blue race person, you've been all these things, and you're building up to this life, and it's all bleeding through it. all the things it was saying was just like, I bawled out crying. And I was like, I don't care if this lady, how good she is. I mean, there's no way she could have known all the things that she just told me that was going to hit me in just a way that was going to like move me that deeply. So, and plus, as I said, the voice turned to his. So, yeah, I mean, I think that there's lots of crystal skulls, obviously, but there's obviously some legends about a specific 13 that can help us with their evolution. And yeah, I think it's really kind of creepily weird that what Mike is saying is really similar. It's like it almost is, now that I think about it, it almost is an artificial intelligence in the skull too, or I don't know. I don't know how it works, but I know it's incredible. They just had a changing of the guard. So Joanna gave it to another girl and I became friends with her on Facebook. And I'm really asking her if she'll bring it to Colorado Springs because I feel like it would be just incredible for a lot of other people to interact with it. So I'm trying to set that up now. Currently, we'll see if
Sweet.
that happens. But yeah, if you get a chance, I would highly recommend, a little. Usually they go around the country, you pay a little money, you get to sit in a room with it, meditate, and charge your crystals up with it, spend a weekend with it sometimes. But yeah, it's just mind blowing all the things that we just don't have any clue about and we don't know about.
Right.
Yeah, I've heard about them for a while. There's a lot of them around, I guess, but I don't know exactly how many or if there are differences between them. I wouldn't know that either. But I feel like some people claim that some are fake and some are real, but I don't know for sure how
So the
to.
Mitchell Hedges one is the only one where the jaw detaches. That's a unique thing to that skull. The one I saw, his name is Max, and it's made out of 5 different types of crystal that are fused together. And we can't do that today. We can't take crystal and basically, kind of like if you've ever been to Peru and you've been to Sacsayhuaman and see all those temples and everything where the rocks are almost like molded together so that there's no space and there's no mortar in between any of them, but they look like they've almost been like wet and then they're molded and then they're hard. You know what I mean? We can't malleably liquefy crystal and then mold it all together into one piece that you could, when you look at its face and there's 3, like one little spot over here, one piece in here, and the half of it is another different type. We can't do that. We can't mold crystal together and make it one. It's not a technology that we have. This thing is, it's incredible, the way this thing is made. And, again, yeah, there are fake. I don't know what fake means as far as it goes, but there's some that I just don't think go with the legend. I think the Anna Mitchell Hedges, the Max, the one in the Smithsonian, some of the British Museum. I've heard, 6 or 7 of the legend ones are out there in the public that are, kind of publicly known, but I'm sure there are other ones that are out there. They're just, privately owned that people don't even know about. But yeah, I assume that the legend is based on some truth. Like I said, to sit in something like that and have an experience like that, to sleep next to it one night, I had no idea what that was going to be like. I was excited to do it, but that was, I don't know if you've ever had kind of astral projection or, things that were what you would call more visions than dreams, where like some really things that are going on that are happening that seem just as real as like me and you hanging out talking right now. That's what it was like to me. And I was constantly being pulled out of my body into those realms. So
Some of my most amazing experiences came from new crystals that I tried sleeping with that were something that were new in my energy. It seemed like it did something. So the first one that was very profound was a piece of lapis that was I just searched for like large or huge stones on eBay. That seemed to be the cheapest way to get larger pieces. I was looking for a large piece of lapis because lapis lazuli was the stone most recommended by Edgar Casey. So I thought that'd be a good one to start experimenting with. And it's a blue stone from Afghanistan. And I put that one near the very, very close to my head. It was kind of like just below the top of the mattress, just resting on a blanket behind my head. And that one seemed to contribute to my first very vivid out of body experience, where it was like I was having a dream. It started in a dream where I was looking at my room in kind of like a different plane, a different reality. But then a peaceful song was playing in the back of my head, and then I snapped awake. It was almost like I peacefully drifted into an awake state. And then my
Mhm.
heart started racing when I realized that I was looking at my body and I was not my body. And that was very profound. And I knew what was happening because of my studies. And I was very excited to go exploring. And I explored out and I saw a tree outside and I went up through the roof and felt like this immense love coming from the heavens, from the sky. It was like the sky was a blanket of love, and it was one of the most beautiful experiences. And then I kind of got frightened. I looked back down, snapped back in my body, and I know that's just basically a very typical story I hear from a lot of people who attend my meetings. That's how their early out of body experiences go, is that they have something that triggers them and they get snapped back into the body. Um, yeah, very interesting that crystals can do these things or benefit the consciousness in some way to expand it.
Yeah. I put crystals under my mattress that align with each chakra, and sleeping like that for a long time would just feel like it just centered me more, um, and felt like everything was like more in alignment, in my body, you know, uh, things that I would like kind of be susceptible to, depression and things like that, were not as easy to kind of like fall into. And so, I've done that. I've done where I've literally put them in my pocket, and it just seems like, so if your body's creating this aura and this energy grid around you, that having certain kinds of crystals and stuff in your field kind of corrects the out of alignment parts of your energy field and your energy grids and things. So to me, it makes perfect sense to carry them around with you, to wear them on necklaces. Different ones do different things, physical, spiritual things. And yeah, I think that's why you see so many people just like buying those small ones and putting them in their pocket just to carry them when something is out of alignment.
Yeah.
you know
The law of one refers to crystals as being frozen light, basically. But of
Mhm.
course, they also say that all of creation is essentially all matter is made of light. But like the purity of the light seems to be a higher proportion of coherence in the light that's frozen into the pure crystals. So it
Isn't
seems
that
as though,
called,
go ahead.
sorry, isn't that called piezoelectricity when you rub two crystals together?
Yeah, there are magnetic and electric effects that are clearly indicating there's something going on that makes it more like, well, I guess it's unlike anything else, the way crystals react to fields. But it definitely seems like they're super sensitive to anything that we're feeling, and if we put a personality on it, if we have like the pet rock. The other day my son was very, very insistent on, my 14-month-old son was carrying around a particular rock. And I was like, it must be something about that rock he's really into, because he doesn't normally hold on to things that long. But it seems like they do hold a vibration. They hold that consciousness that we putting into it, and then
Mhm.
because they're holding on to it, then it's like we don't have to hold on to it as strongly. That stone is now the one that's carrying the I guess the dead weight when we don't have that same vibration anymore. The stone that we gave it that intention to have that energy, it maintains. So that's why it's important also to, regularly, if you have stones around you, to put some attention on them
Mhm.
and re-energize them.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
my daughter does the same thing, and it's funny that it's just intuitive, right? Just there are a lot of things she won't hold on to for very long, but man, if she gets a crystal boy, she will carry it around forever. And if you try to get it out of her hand, it's like locked in there; like you can't get it out. But I do think it is an intuitive thing. That's why we're just drawn, and we look at those things. And a lot of times people say, "Which one do I need?" Like, man, whatever one calls to you the most, whatever one you're most attracted to, go grab a couple and throw them in your pocket, and they're going to be helpful. Um, and energy grids too, just having a lot of different types, small, medium, big, and putting them around your house, and just intuitively, I mean, I feel like when I've got crystals, I feel that intuitive call, put one here, put one here, put these over here, and then sometimes change and relocate them, so that they're not just staying in the same place. But having like an energy grid in your house makes it feel so powerful. Like, I mean, there's a reason why, Superman has to go charge up in his little crystal cave. You know what I mean? Like it's very charging, especially if you need to charge them in the sun, charge them in the moonlight, and move them around and put them. I mean, those grids can really amplify the energy of your home. And like I said, sometimes just moving around, when people walk in, they're like, oh my God, it feels so good in here, and it's just like, I live in a house just like anybody else in the neighborhood, but I bet you walking into my house, if you were put a blindfold on somebody and do like a blind study, I bet you that if you just said, well, how do you feel? Like it would be different. There would be like a level of 1 to 10. How do you feel? I bet you if you were to do a study on that, you would, find out that people who had crystal grids and crystals in their home, it would just feel better. I definitely felt that, and I won't go back because I know for me that is the truth. So they definitely seem to be something that holds memory, that can hold energy, that can really clean you out and realign you back into better you.
Yeah. I believe the wood also in the walls can even absorb our consciousness over time and help a room feel a certain way.
Right. And that's why I feel like you see a lot of people when they move into a new house, they'll like sage it and, and do a lot of prayer and stuff in it to kind of let some of those things go. I mean, spirits can get stuck to homes, and energy can get stuck into homes and things like that. So it is always good to do cleansing and stuff before you move in. I mean, my dad would not ever subscribe to like ghosts or anything like that, but his brother died while we lived in the house that I grew up in. And we used to always say that he would pick things up and move them and change them and put them somewhere in the house. And we had this really tall cabinet, and there would be things that we put up there sometimes that nobody would put up there, and we would find them up there. And they would always say like Wayne did it, and it was always kind of a joke in the house or whatever. But, I don't think anybody took a lot of, gave a lot of credit to that story. But when my parents finally moved out and my dad rented that house out, he went back to the house, and the tenants, they asked him about the ghost that was in there. My dad was like, he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And they were like, yeah, he looks like this, and he reads the paper and he sits on the couch over here. And it like God smacked my dad. He's like, that looks exactly like my brother. And he used to read the paper and sit on the couch over there. And he said, I don't know what that means. He goes, but that is definitely odd. And so, things get stuck, souls get stuck, energy gets stuck, and we need to cleanse it. When it's definitely helpful and healing to remind the spirits in there, hey, you guys don't belong here anymore, go back and do it all over again. Don't get stuck on this. Don't worry about us. We'll take care of this, go back and let's do the lineage thing, so I think that is important to sage and to, energy can get stuck too, and chakras can get like supposed to be little pools of spinning, water and stuff, and they can get clogged up too. So it's good to move those energy bodies around and the energy in our homes. And I think it's good to help her, allowing kind of like a crystal grid to protect your home, to not allow certain things and entities and spirits to get in. That is definitely something that happens. People get inundated with spirits, and things happen like that. And we'll say we're at the spiritual war. I don't like to consider them as more so like a war, but I do think that we have to protect these avatars that we're in, our souls that are in these avatars. There are a lot of entities that want to be in the physical. And so I think one of the things that I learned being a bartender was that alcohol was like a huge portal for negative spirits. And so I saw people do things and things that would happen because of alcohol. And I had this moment where I was sitting up the bar one day, and this epiphany or kind of a question that came into me instantly. And it was like, why do they call alcohol spirits? And I was like, I don't know, but I got this fancy phone and I'll look it up. And sure enough, ancient people believe that alcohol did open up a portal to spirits to jump in and out. And I like kind of immediately knew that's why people would say things and do things they wouldn't normally do in alcohol. It wasn't them, and you would forget it. You could totally black out and totally forget it. And I was like, oh, that's because you're not in charge anymore. There's another entity in charge doing things, and you're kind of like taking a back seat. And then come to full circle to hear people who are doing kind of like, I guess you would call it maybe positively channeling, people channeling like Bashar or Ramtha or something, who are coming up with these incredible information just flowing through them. And or Abraham Hicks, and she would say, when I'm channeling this, I'm kind of sitting in the back, kind of listening and doing my own thing, but I'm aware of it. And I was like, oh, that's exactly what the other people are doing too. They're just channeling something kind of negative. So, we have to really protect these bodies that we're in and make sure we're putting not just good food and good thoughts and good emotions, but, protecting ourselves with, good things in our house and positive things and positive light things and crystals and stuff. So,
Okay. Anything
Wow.
else you guys want to say?
No, great job, guys. Thank you. This was really awesome. Thanks, Mike. Thanks. Yeah.
Appreciate you all. Yeah. Good stuff. All right,
care.
guys. Have a great night.
All right. Good
All
night,
right,
guys. See you.
peace.
Bye.